Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Countertop. I know I'm kind of in a weird spot to be recording this right now, but that was because I'm on a weekend trip right now, and I'm at my in-laws, and I am recording this from Slade's computer and using my laptop over here with the script and the information. So, welcome back to the Countertop, where we're talking about the craziest VeggieTales theory ever, which is answering the origin of the Cucumber of Steel, Larryboy. Now, in the last video, we gave kind of a very detailed explanation of Larryboy and who he is and all the stuff that he has, and specifically his relationship with his butler Alfred, who is in disguise as the wonderful asparagus Archibald Asparagus. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be winding back the clock quite a bit of time. We're going to be going all the way back to the origin of the family tree of Larry, and how through all of the events that are recorded within the show of VeggieTales, we're seeing the birth of Larryboy and the inspiration from that as something way, way, way back that happened in ancient time. And yes, ancient time sounds like a crazy amount. You're probably like, oh, this birth Zojalyx, you're coming up with this theory that goes back to ancient times. There's bound to be ways that it falls apart. And I'm going to be honest, there actually are. But that is just because we don't have necessary information. Because information gets lost over time. That's history. That's an important part of history. But for the majority of this, it's going to be fairly accurate to the information that is provided within the show. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to rewind the clock. The year is 1096. Yes, 1096, believe it or not. The Roman Empire during this time has become one of the largest world powers and are now in a state of war. This war is with the dangerous, the deadly, and the cunning barbarians. Now, this is not obviously where the mantle of Larryboy begins. I explained that earlier on. So, but bear with me here. The seeds that sprout into what we see as Larryboy begins is in the video Mac Larry and the Stinky Cheese Battle. That's right, this is the first time that Larry's lineage is ever shown on screen in the year of 1096. And the reason this is the year of the 1096 is because this is around the time when the Crusades began. And this is going to be an important aspect for the beginning of the Crusades in the year 1096, as we then fast forward periodically even more throughout the history of the Roman Empire and where it all continues on in the history of VeggieTales to what we then lead up to as the mantle of Larryboy coming in modern day times. So, we're going to be focusing on three very distinct characters in this video. We have Mac Larry himself, which is the patriarch here. Well, not quite the patriarch, but at this point, one of the key factors of this lineage. We have the father of Mac Larry, the great barbarian Chognorius. That is something that is very important, and we're going to have to be watching that because that will give us an insight. Well, it'll just give us an insight as to how Larry becomes who he is when you combine the aspects of both Chognorius and Mac Larry. Okay, but we'll get to that again in a second. And then we have the great inventor Archimedes. Now, Archimedes, we'll explain that later as he becomes more relevant within the video itself. So, the barbarians have been in a prank war with the Romans during this time. Their pranks range from bad haircuts to water balloon attacks. And there's only one thing that Chog wants more than to see the destruction of the Romans. And that is for his son, Mac Larry, to become a fully dedicated barbarian prankster. However, this doesn't go as planned. And it definitely does not go as well as Chog would have hoped. As part of the barbarian ritual, you have to take this exam before you are a fully indoctrinated barbarian prankster. And in this instance, Mac Larry was around that age where he would be taking this exam. But the struggle with Mac Larry is he fails the exam multiple times. Attempt after attempt after attempt, Mac Larry was unable to pass his exam to go on raids. But this was because Mac Larry was not a prankster. He was a soon-to-be inventor. He was the biggest fan of the most legendary inventor at the time, Archimedes. And all he wanted to do was to meet him and to become his apprentice so that way he could learn how to become an even better inventor. This is important. Now, since McLary failed his prankster exam, he decided it was time to move on. He was going to leave his home and he was going to then become the apprentice of Archimedes. He was just going to put pranking behind him, and Archimedes was going to be his focus. Now, long story short, McLary got deceived. There was some really stinky cheese. I believe it's called
the cheese of Attila.
And eventually, Archimedes does show up at the end. Now, pay attention to Archimedes here. Look at who Archimedes has a very, very strong resemblance to. And obviously you would be thinking, well, duh, it's the show. Of course it's going to be played Archimedes, Archibald, Godoy. Well, yes, but also that family relationship that we covered in the last video is really important. It's important that you understand that that family relationship between Larry and Archie and, well, sorry, Archibald or Alfred has to start somewhere. And this is where it starts. In the tutelage between Archimedes and McLary. Okay? And also, look at the monocle. Look at the monocle. So that's really all that we're going to be getting into in McLary and the Stinky Cheese battle. We're seeing now the lineage beginning here. We are seeing the cleverness of Chognorius being shown in his son McLary, then being, or in Chognorius in his pranking, and then being passed down to his son McLary, and McLary using his cleverness in his own way to become an inventor. And if you have more questions about that, watch the McLary video. That just solves a lot of the issues there. Anyways, as McLary continues his tutelage with Archimedes, this is going to be taking place then after the events of McLary and the Stinky Cheese battle. He begins to adopt some of the lifestyle of the Romans. He learns about living proper and the difference between being a barbarian and a Roman and how there had a lot of cultural differences in that aspect. So with these cultural differences, this then leads us into our next film, which would take place around the time of the Second Crusade specifically. And this would be Robin Hood and his not-so-merry men. All right? Now, in this episode, we have Robin Hood, a descendant of McLary. Now, obviously, you're like, but his last name is Norrius. How does he get the last name Good? Okay, yeah, well, you know, people have daughters. Whoa. Yeah, so anyway, Robin Hood spends his time in Sherwood Forest, fundraising from the rich to give to the poor, because during this time, Sherwood Forest is in a state of poverty. And if you look at his roster of not-so-merry men, there's one distinct person that sticks out. Friar Cluck. Yes, that's all that's relevant. He's there. That family relationship continues. And the fact that the descendants of Archimedes be a member of the church, it's not that surprising, to be honest. Unfortunately, right now, one of the biggest treasures within Sherwood Forest is a ham. They love ham. Like, instead of a birthday cake, you get a birthday ham. But unfortunately, Prince John has established this tax that makes hams extraordinarily expensive. And he starts kind of hoarding all of the ham that is in Sherwood Forest. And yeah, it's not pretty. Anyway, long story short, eventually the giants that really want ham end up coming in and causing some struggle, which then Robin Hood goes and messes some things up. And, well, when I say messes some things up, I mean he fixes the giant issue. And then eventually at the end, the people are deciding who they should put in charge, and they want to put Robin Hood in charge, but Robin Hood is like, no, that's not for me. You should really be putting, and he points to the sheriff and puts him in charge. To which then the sheriff, who is played by Bob the Tomato, ends up being in charge. And this is a key point here as well. So, throughout this time, now, between the crusade that we're at here to then the next period, we've got another period of time where Robin Hood and his lineage would continue to build up the line in Sherwood Forest. They would continue to ascend, and it would become another great kingdom. In fact, it would become a kingdom so great that eventually, by the time the Roman Empire splits apart, you have its kingdom. And this becomes the Kingdom of Scone. Yes, the Kingdom of Scone. I'm sure that sounds familiar. But we aren't going to be covering that in this video because we're actually kind of starting to run low on time.
It's complicated. I'll explain later.
But anyways, Robin Good would move on eventually within his lineage to now he would jump ahead and he would be the one leading versus the line of the sheriff. They would kind of sink below because everybody held this high esteem of Robin Good and they were like, oh my gosh, we love Robin Good. He's doing all the things. And so eventually that lineage just eventually trumps the lineage of the sheriff. And now, as we get to the Third Crusade, we're going, well, the eve of the Third Crusade, I would say. We're kind of like quite a few years out of that yet still. But we're going to be entering our very next period of time where the lineage of Robin Good ascends into power and you get the man, the myth, the knight, the legend, Duke. Our next video that we will be covering is going to be Duke in the Great Pie War. But unfortunately, we're out of time for that video, and we will cover that in the next episode. So if you guys are enjoying this series, please leave a like, leave a comment down below if you have any questions. There will be a Discord link down below. You can check that out, where there will be ways you can hang out, you can discuss this theory, you can bring up other theories that you might have, just different things that we can all be talking about together and growing and having a ton of fun exploring random things in VeggieTales. Also, make sure you give a subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. The channel is absolutely incredible, and it's been a ton of fun to put out this content for you guys. So please do like and subscribe, and I will see you guys all next time on the Countertop. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Dance with me, Lampy!